That was the totally wrong intro.
Aha.
Welcome to Eviliv3, Live Media Commentary Show that answers the question, if each Dune book is a setup for future Dune books, could I just read the last one and be happy? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing Dune Messiah. So, your
Well,
initial
it is
thoughts on this?
prescient, so it might work.
Seriously. Just follow the path, man. Follow that golden path. Okay, so initial thoughts on this. What do you think?
This is a segment. So this is like between the Dune story and then leading into the next trilogy.
Yeah.
So it's a strange book.
Yeah.
You have to be invested in the universe to get it. If you're a casual reader and you pick it up, you're probably going to scratch your head and go, "Huh?"
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, like, yeah, my initial impression is very much the same, where this felt like he could have taken the first 3/4 of Dune novel, taken the last fourth, tacked it onto this book, and it would have made infinitely more like sense to me. As a standalone, it's really just it's like Frank trying to figure out a way of getting Paul out of the picture, because you can't really have a good story with a god in it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like, we got to get him out of here so we can move the universe forward. I don't know what happens after this. So this is just my impression just on the book itself. So those are my initial thoughts. Like, I felt like the author was trying to get rid of his
It's all set
favorite
up.
character.
It's all set up for Children of Dune.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
there is a pacing thing with the book
mhm.
because, like, big book, small book, big book. Then the last two are like interesting.
Yeah, it sort of blew me away, the disparity between them. I mean, I was frustrated when in Dune they jumped forward 2 years or 3 years or whatever it was at the end.
Now we're going 12.
And yeah, and so like it's leading up to the part where he is like literally threatening all the guilds and the emperor, like, you either make me king or you're all screwed. And everyone's like, we don't have a choice. Okay, fine. And he knew by doing that that he couldn't stop this massive jihad from happening, but that it was the only way to reduce the amount of suffering. And so coming to this, I'm thinking, oh, we're going to pick up from there. We're going to see an awesome war and have to deal with the conscience that Paul has to struggle with of unleashing the horrors that war entails. And then how does he justify his own actions through that? But instead, we don't get any of that. We just jump forward.
Frank Herbert shies away, and the whole series he shies away from more the actual battles. I don't know whether it's because he has a particular style of writing to write war novels, to write battle sequences. Yeah. It could be that. This is like a very philosophical series, and it's all about the human condition and where the human condition can take us.
Yeah,
and that seems to be its focus, but yeah, you kind of miss out on that because he's not writing a traditional science fiction novel.
Yeah, no.
If it was a traditional science fiction novel, you'd have your space battles, you'd have your land battles, which we've seen, many times over.
Yeah. He's
stepped away and he's went a different path, which is, yeah, it's a bit strange, I don't know what to liken this to. I was thinking, the closest thing I can think of is James Clavell's Shogun.
Oh, I didn't watch that.
Where, that's right, there was a TV series on it, this book. I think you're talking about making that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think you're talking about making that again. I don't know whether it's going to be a movie or a TV series they're remaking, but that's the sort of the feudal lords of Japan, and it didn't focus on the battles, it was the philosophy behind it and the intrigue. So this is what I liken it to, but it's in a science fiction setting.
Okay.
So if you're prepared for that, then you'll get where it's coming from.
Yeah.
If you're not, you're just Dune in general. If you're not prepared for that, you're just scratching your head going, what is this?
Yeah, I think that's where I am, because I really thought, after having seen the original movie as a kid, seeing the new movie recently, I thought it was going to be like a typical science fiction novel. And so I go back and I read Dune and I was really disappointed. I still enjoyed it and I love the universe. I just wish there was more action in the universe, because then...
And that's what both movies have done so far. Yeah. They've sort of dropped this part, the sort of strange scratching your head, but and then went on the visual aspect, which works.
Yeah.
And that's why I said they're two different mediums. You know, book medium, movie medium are different experiences. So you just have to come in, I think, with that expectation,
Yeah.
or else you're in trouble. You're just going, and you're getting a wee bit of brain overload.
Yeah, the worst part about it is that there are shows like House of the Dragon, which are very much political intrigue types of
But
shows.
that works better in a fantasy setting for some reason.
I feel
I'll
like
use
they
The
could pull it off.
Expanse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to work as well in a sci-fi setting. People expect when it comes to science fiction to focus on the technology.
Yeah.
I'll use The
And this has
Expanse as an
none.
example. If you've watched that, have you?
Which one?
The Expanse.
Yeah, yeah. Did I? I No, I can't remember. Yeah, I think I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So it set outer. It's human civilization. It's outer reaches of space. It's almost like the Dune, but it's still in our solar system.
Right.
And it started focusing on the political intrigue rather than the science fiction, and people started dropping off about season 3 because people want to see science fiction. When people watch science fiction or read about it, it's the technology, it's the possible future.
Right.
That's the expectation, you know, and that's fair enough. You know, what I mean, you expect what you expect. That's why there are genres. That's why, like when I go to watch a horror movie, I expect to see boobies and blood. You know,
Right. Yeah.
you know that's my expectation. And when you get like A24, it's a good example in the horror world.
Mm-hmm.
They do a lot of cerebral stuff. So if you're going to a horror movie expecting a horror movie and you get a lot of cerebral stuff, you're kind of scratching your head for a minute, you know. But then there is room for all this. That's the beauty of there being so many styles. There's room for all this, and it's good to be challenged now and again, and it's good to come out of your comfort zone and go into somewhere else, because then that's what gets the old grey matter going.
Absolutely, yeah. Hey, Chris, thanks for tuning in live. This is not supposed to be a standalone. It's really, as
it's an interlude.
Paul mentioned, it's like a jump off point. It's like wrapping up a previous story, setting up a new story. So I would not ever read this as a standalone because it would make zero sense.
Oh no, you'd be, huh?
I mean, no sense at all. You would not understand anything because it doesn't explain why things happen the way they did, just that they did happen. And it doesn't explain where it's going to go. It just ends with where it's going to be picked up. So it, as a standalone, it's really, and maybe this is a good part to just sort of talk about the plot of this, because really all this is an unsteady empire that needs an heir and doesn't have one, and then a bunch of factions around that empire trying their best to overturn it and reclaim control of the universe. And so they're trying to stop him, and he's trying to make an heir to, you know, appease everyone. And that's at the base of it, what's going on.
Oh yeah, it's a very, very simple story. Like, we're not in terms of the plot, but once again, and I think this is where Frank Herbert sort of fails as a writer. He concentrated on the world building and not the story.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he's thought about
world.
Oh yeah, now do you understand? Does this, after reading this book, I'll have to ask, after our last conversation, do my concerns make a little bit more sense?
Yeah. 100. I mean, it's totally valid, and I got it from reading the first Dune novel.
Mm-hmm.
Why, you know?
But when we jump into this, like, there's more world building. Now we've got the Benny Felix, the Lexu. We've got all that coming in. We've got the face dancers. And this is all human biological weapons.
Yeah.
And if this is going to get dropped in movie format, people are just going to go, huh? That's not like the last two.
It's going to be impossible. I don't even know why you would try to do this as a third film to the first two, because the first two are one story.
Yeah.
This is 12 years later. Like, it's a totally different story. And it's like the end. So Frank Herbert is often saying that he wanted to take the sort of hero's journey and flip it on its head, so that the idea of hero worship, seeing them actually become bad. But I didn't see that yet. So is that something that happens later on?
No, because I don't want to get it. Paul's journey's not finished yet. Let's just put it like that. He's a wee bit left to go.
Yeah.
But obviously the next part's going to go through Leto II. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to find out about the Golden Path, and that's what Paul shunned in the first place.
Yeah.
I was afraid to go. So it's almost like the Kwisatz Haderach, he's not actually it. It's think of the Matrix series and think of Neo not being the one,
Right.
and being the latest iteration of the one.
Right. Right. Right.
That's almost what this is like. And the Benny Felex talking about they had already made their own Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And it failed. And this has been tried before, and they've got to that nexus point, and it's failed. So this is where he brings in the sort of, there's almost a mysticism that, they're trying to rationalize, and it's a merging of, the battle between religion and science.
Yeah.
Science as well, the two philosophies. So they're trying to rationalize everything, but there's still that spark, that random incident, the universe that you've no control over. It still has to come into play, and it doesn't matter. You can plan and scheme and do whatever, but if the universe isn't going to let you do it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's the whole overriding theme I've got with the whole series. And if you're not prepared for that, then you're just not going to get this at all.
Yeah. I mean, so to just judge this book on its own merits for what it is, not for where it's going to lead to or not where it came from, to be absolutely fair about it, I think it had possibility of being interesting, but I really don't think Frank is a good storyteller. He's a great universe builder. He's a great world builder.
Yeah, where do you get the brand?
Yeah. Oh, dude.
Oh, that's so. Just don't go there. That's
this originally was a 5-part series in Galaxy Science Fiction magazine, published from June to October in 1969, and then Putnam ended up putting out a hardback edition of it in 1969 in October, but it was expanded upon. So if you just read the magazine versions, then you're not going to get the totality of what this is, and that's not saying a lot because it's only 350 pages. It's like a very, very quick read. It's like a pulp. Like a pulp science fiction novel.
They're not complicated. It's not a complicated story.
No, you're right. And that's why I think people expected it, because the first one was so massive and deep and had potential, that this one, you can't help but compare it, because it's literally the second, but it's just nowhere in the same realm of, in my opinion, quality as the first one.
And he had written this. It's actually finished this before he completed Dune.
Yeah, that's another part that sort of sets it. I think he sets himself up to fail as an author, because before he finished Dune, he started this and he did Children of Doom, and then he went back and finished Dune. So you're making it impossible to just judge a novel on its merits. You have to then read more in order to judge the first novel, and that's unfair to a reader.
Yeah, and that's where I am. I went through obviously the whole series and then went back. But in the first read, it's a tricky one. I'll not deny that. It's not. I'm not here to go, oh, this is the best thing. I mean, it's an enjoyable series, but it has its flaws like anything.
Yeah.
It's the world building that's hooked me, and the ideas. That's the bit. I kind of gloss over the story. It's that bit that has me fascinated with this. Because there's really so much there. Yeah, I mean, and it's nice to have that, to be able to imagine, oh, right, this is where we could go, and these are possibilities.
Well, to have the depth of the universe that he puts out, and to see the very, very original evolution of humanity, that's the real strength of his writing, and he's great at that. I just wish that. I don't know. I think
if he had a better editor, I think this is an editing issue, to be honest.
That could be it.
I think, honestly, if he had put up to the beginning of Children of Dune, slapped it on the table, went, okay, here's where I'm at, and an editor actually went in and split it into back to the 5-part series.
Right.
I think that's might have worked. It might have worked better as a trilogy.
Yeah.
It's the whole pacing of like I said, you go from this to this, and then you're going to go back to this again.
It's frustrating because we were taught to really love Paul as this sort of God, this Messiah, and then we see him like sort of shortchanging himself for the sake of a potential future. And that's what always drives me crazy, is that if he's presented as this like God, and then he's the only one that can lead humanity into this bright future. And then in this novel, he's constantly jumping between potential futures in his head. And there's like this old idiom of storytelling of show, don't tell. All this does is tell. It never shows, like it's just, I feel like this whole novel is just everyone in their own heads monologuing about what could possibly be if they did X or Y. And what you're left with when things actually happen is completely confusing. Like, I don't understand the Bene Talax, or however you pronounce it, their plot.
Talaxu. Yeah.
Talaxu, yeah. It made no sense at all. Like, they were trying to kill him, but if they didn't kill him, then they were going to try to convince him to get another robot that becomes sentient so that the Fremen abandon him. But they try to kill him in 3 different ways, and then their fallback like overlaps. So even when their fallback comes into place of Duncan, Idaho, they still have Sightale trying to kill him and his kids. Like, have one plot that's really good and execute it. All these weird like tertiary plots that are all tied right back to the Talaxu, or I don't know why I can't say that right.
It's a strange word.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I just don't get why he made it so needlessly convoluted. Like, does it make sense in the future or something?
Well, when it goes, now I'm reevaluating, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because when I obviously I read these, but I went like through the entire series. I was just that type of reader. I get the entire series or something, and I just go from start to end.
Yeah.
This is something I'm learning myself. Actually, when you take these things in isolation, I've done it recently there with Lord of the Rings. Instead of just binging the entire box set, I went right back to taking each movie as an individual entity. How's it work? How's it not work? Etc. It's a different experience. So going back and taking these as individual stories, yeah, you can just see the pacing. He needed a good editor.
Yeah.
That's what he could have benefited from. Just a good editor who went, right, the pacing of this is all off. The fantastic stuff there hasn't really been done before, before he wrote it. And nobody's really tried this again.
Yeah.
To go this direction. There's been sort of that, but everyone stays with the traditional, spaceships and all about,
aliens.
You read any sci-fi novel, it's always about the spaceship's drive or weapons. That's the main focus they talk about. How do they get from the stars? This is completely different. And it is, it's fascinating because it's original.
Yeah.
But yeah, this story, it is a tack on. You just feel it. It's a tack on. And if you're not going to go any further forward, you're not going to get it. Now, the story does even out a bit when we move to Leto.
Right.
But we've still Alia's story to go.
So Leto is the
Leto's second son.
Twin son of Paul's.
Who he didn't know he was going to have.
Yeah, which, again, is really weird because he was supposed to be able to see all possible futures.
But he it's his own rejection. That's where...
yeah, he rejected it so that he could save his kids and, not move into the future as the hero. Like, that was his choice.
And he didn't want Chani to die.
Yeah, well, I mean, he ultimately accepted that. And then,
because
everything he did...
Because alternatives were Chani as a Gola.
Yeah.
Not being Chani, and then if she comes to herself realizing what was done to her, it'd be the biggest affront to her as a Fremen.
Yeah, it's because they completely rejected it, and that's why he started losing.
But she would reject it. She would actually hate him for it.
Yeah, as soon as she became fully sentient, like Duncan did, and I thought that concept was fun because ultimately, if it was just that, where they create this creature called a Gola, which is basically a Duncan Idaho died in the first novel.
It's a clone.
He was only in it for it's just a clone. He was only in it for 40 minutes worth of book time. So he wasn't even important to anyone, to the story enough to... Why didn't they use Gurney Halleck? Like, he's not even in it. Just use him as a stand-in because he was really the one that had the relationship with Paul. Then it would have been more believable and more heartfelt and stuff.
Oh, it gets stranger.
Oh, really?
Where's my Duncan? When we get, oh, well, we've got that to go for. When Leto loses his mind.
Oh, really?
um,
yeah. So anyway, like
But you understand what I was saying about I think once you said you'd read this, I'm like, is Jason Momoa going to be able to do Duncan Idaho as the Zensunni
he'll be
philosopher?
Able to do Jason Momoa.
That's
Duncan Idaho.
Yeah, Zensunni philosophy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. Okay, so people who haven't read this may not understand. So Duncan Idaho is cloned, but the cloning process allows the opportunity of sentience. It's not something that I don't think they were looking to do, but they did it. Or if they were looking to do it, they've been unsuccessful thus far. And Duncan's like the first one that actually is, rather than being a clone with this sort of embedded program, he actually becomes fully himself again, like conscience to himself, overriding all of the pre-programming and stuff. So he becomes Duncan Idaho 100% again, rather than this Gola creation, this clone. And so the premise is that if they could do that with Duncan, well, then Paul could have his wife too, because she's going to die in childbirth. He's seen it over and over and over again. But if he does that, he loses all the Fremen and he'll lose Chani. So there's literally no upside to that plan, except that it would then free up the throne so that the powers that be can take it back over. And the Bene Gesserit could then get Paul under their wing again and try to control him again. So it's just like an interesting sort of spy thriller plot that just gets in its own way and is never fully realized. It's so wild. Like, they seed so many possibilities. It's like a dungeon master who the players are bringing up a bunch of ideas and they're like, yeah, let's do that. And he abandons his original plot to follow the great idea that his player gave him. And then you just keep doing that over and over again. And so when you're finally at the end of the campaign, you're like, wait, what was the plan? Because I just went with better ideas later on and I totally forgot where I was going. That's what I got from this.
Yeah, because he introduces a new faction to this, like the Bene Flexi, and you're like, no preface, no mention of them before. Then there is a bit because, like I was saying, the Butler and Jihad and the Flexi were considered unclean by the rest of the universe, and the Ixen as well, which barely get a mention. And they're sort of the architects, still trying to bring back thinking machines.
Yeah.
And sort of the Ixen tanks, they're the Ixen are sort of in behind that as well. You don't really get a mention of them, but they're brought in as a faction. So you've got this, once again, expanded universe, but we get no payoff.
Yeah.
Like, really, there's a whole thing between why the Bene Gesserit and the Bene Flexi at odds with each other. What are the two orders? Are they trying to replace the Bene Gesserit, as the whisper behind the throne now? But their method is absolutely shocking. Like, that's not going to work in a million years.
Yeah.
We see Moham, the Reverend Mother, Moham, sorry. She's just bitter.
Yeah, she's a broken woman.
She is just filled with hate and envy. But she even mentions in the book, and I think they did a better job, like I said, in the recent movie, of saying, well, this is one plan, but we measure our plans in centuries.
Yeah.
So why is she freaking out?
Yeah.
Over 12-year period if they've already they've moved to plan B. So this side of it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
but also it's good to see where the characters, because a lot of they either just get killed straight away or brushed off and you never hear from them again. At least this book brings, lets you know where they are. Shaddam the Fourth is, confined to his planet. He's allowed to have one legion of Sardaukar. And then they brought the whole thing. Why is the Emperor why is Shaddam commencing landing operations with his Sardaukar? He's not allowed to do that. Tell him to stop, please. All very politely.
Yeah.
If he's any notion of getting power back, forget it. He'll get wiped out.
Yeah. Where's Jessica? Like,
She comes back.
It's so
See, that's the thing. You can't really
strange.
talk about this. You can't talk about this book. That's the problem with this book. You can't talk about it in isolation because this is just the prelude to Children of Dune.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. That's what it is. It's more Children of Dune than it is Dune.
Yeah. 100%. It's how Children of Dune can even happen. How he got his kids.
Yeah,
and
this really should have been a preface. It should have tacked on to the first part of Children of Dune. Children of Dune shouldn't be one book. It should have been two, and this should have been merged into it.
Yeah. Never having read that, it definitely feels like it.
And actually, this book makes more sense when you read Children of Dune. But compared to the first one, like just I want to read the next thing. You'll read this and you just go, what?
It's weird because, like, if I just read this, if I was Denis Villeneuve, and like I wanted to make a Dune movie, take the first book and make 2 movies out of it, that makes total logical sense. Why would you make this as a movie? This doesn't do anything except for set up a future movie.
Mm-hmm.
So are you just like going to continue if you're going to continue making the whole series, then it makes sense. But it sounds like he was just stopping at Messiah to make a trilogy. But this is the worst ending to a trilogy.
Yeah.
It makes no sense at all. Okay. Well.
And you understand as well when I had my concerns about the movie.
Yeah.
And my concerns were because he said he's going to make Messiah. No, I mean, this had already been out, I think, just before Dune was released. Mm-hmm. He'd already mentioned that was the plan to do Messiah.
Yeah.
And that's what got my head scratched. I'm like, well, they're going to have to do it completely different, even from the David Lynch version.
Yeah.
Because David Lynch's version did have an attempt at it, did sprinkle some of the seeds.
Yeah.
It's a movie of its time. And sorry anybody that didn't enjoy it, but I did. So
everyone has different opinions. It's all good. I actually want to watch it again.
It's funny. It's such a. I know people that love the movie. I mean, fanatically love it. People like me enjoyed it. There's people that absolutely hate it. There's people that are indifferent about it. It's a movie at the end of the day.
It's a polarizing movie for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure for sci-fi fans.
Yeah, because this is the polarizing series though.
Yeah, 100%.
The polarizing story because it's not your traditional sci-fi. It's a philosophy, political drama.
Yeah.
It's almost a religious story, as much as it is science fiction.
Yeah, 100%.
The fascinating thing for me, that's one thing I tried to find actually was the Dune Tarot back in the day, but they never properly made it. Like there's stuff on Etsy and all, but they never.
Oh really?
That would be an amazing thing to have the actual proper Dune Tarot. There's been like parodies of it.
Oh wow.
If that makes sense, but just picture those little hexagonals, and lay it out. It'd be a lot of fun to have.
Yeah, it would.
But say la vie, never happened. But what is gripping about this story is the idea that we evolve so much that we de-evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Look at today. We have access to more information than ever. We should be a super enlightened species, like heading for the stars.
Right.
And what are we doing? We're looking at our genitals.
And we're fighting for no reason.
We've gone back into just clubbing each other over the head. Albeit digitally, but we've actually evolved so much that we're starting to devolve. The human condition's fascinating,
Yeah, I 100% agree.
I still, in a million years, will never understand people. I've given up even trying now, but it's still fascinating to see other people's take on it as a step back perspective. And that's what I like about this. It's a bird's eye view of the human species.
Yeah. It's weird because from the outside, before I read any book at all, before anything, I just had that movie as a kid as a reference. I thought everyone who loved Dune, loved Dune because it was an amazing, amazing series. Once I read it and started reviewing and looking at other people's reviews and sort of diving in, I'm realizing, wow, this is not at all what I thought it was. People who are into Dune are into it for really different reasons, and they are fervent about those reasons alone, and they hate all of the other parts of the franchise. And I've never understood that with an IP before. Usually it's like everyone who's into the IP loves every aspect of it and they want to explore it. But some people just freak the fuck out over the first movie, or they just, they hate the pacing or the writing or the lack of detail or, like aspects of it, but they love the universe. And it's just so strange to see a fan base latching on to aspects of the IP rather than the totality of it.
Yeah, and I take it as a whole. That's why I'm not going to sit here and be fanatical. Like, this is one of the founding series I read. No, if it wasn't for Dune, I wouldn't be interested in fantasy. I'd be watching reality TV, on a sofa, letting my brain rot. I wouldn't be thinking.
Yeah.
It's series like this that make you think. Is it perfect? No, absolutely not. But what story is?
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a perfect story.
Yeah.
And back to the fandom of Dune and the people who hate Dune represent Dune, if that makes sense. Because it's the devolution of the human condition. We'll go right back to the caves, we'll pick up our club, and we go, ugh.
Yeah.
And that's what he's explored. And maybe it's an uncomfortable truth that this is who we are. We can have all the technology of the day, we can have all the advances, but we're still monkeys in suits.
Yeah. We're still subject to our own
still chimps in suits that
weaknesses
will
and
beat each other over a grape.
I thought there was such a promise of exploring the idea of gender through Dune, and maybe there's like some sort of essay about it somewhere that I haven't found yet, but it's set up in the first novel very beautifully as this idea of the Bene Gesserits are this feminine entity that has immense power and very patient plans that span generations. The males, if they ever tapped into that, would be the most powerful thing ever. And then one does. And so it completely changes the whole dynamic of not just the Bene Gesserit's plans, but also the foundation of the universe itself. I wanted to explore more of that through Aaliyah, because she bridges this gap, in my opinion, where of course she doesn't have access to all the male genes and stuff. But in this novel,
spoilers.
Like from what I've been exposed to her as, it's like a lost opportunity for a character. I wanted her to have to struggle with the concepts of not having a sense of identity. All of the other Bene Gesserits go through the process of exposing and opening their minds. She was born with it. She's never been an individual. And it even talks about in this novel how she feels like her mom because she has all of her memories up to birth. So she's
even having sex with her dad.
Yeah. Which is weird.
Yeah, but that's why they're known as abominations.
Yeah.
To be preborn is a massive it's a bad thing to happen because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the first part of Children of Dune is as much Aaliyah's story as it is
cool.
kids. So this will get explored. I'll just put it there.
Good. Because I like the character. I like the idea of it. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and it does get explored because it is a thread just hanging there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's what it is? He's had this entire universe plotted out in his head, and it was how to get it down without. Because obviously you can't just expedition dump this all in the first book. People's heads would be blown.
Yeah,
that's why I'm saying
never get through it, yeah.
If he's going to explore this side of things, part 2 is going to have to be an expedition dump because part 3 is going to make no sense.
Yeah.
Or is he just going to gloss over? Is that Villeneuve's plan? Do you think, just to remove this aspect, which makes Dune,
I think,
and just make it a generic, on a surface level, the sci-fi story?
After having read this, and watching what he did with the first one, I think he has to strip away what makes Dune in order to make it a film for audiences. There's just no way you could do it because he already hasn't done it. He hasn't even dipped into it, and that's when you're supposed to be seeding stuff. I think.
So that's what we're going to get. Then we're not going to get this, but then this is.
I think we're going to get that political thriller. Is what
this is not an easy read. Okay.
Well, the series as
It's
a whole. I think the book itself is
yeah,
it's a simple enough read. It's just there's
but
so
it's not
much it
because
expects.
it's there's too much jarring away in there.
Yeah,
There's more questions than answers,
yeah,
and you have to read it as a whole. That's the thing. You have to read all the books and read this as a whole to get it, and then you go back. You can't just. This isn't one you just step into. This is something you have to commit to. If that makes sense.
yeah. I do feel like you hit the nail on the head. If he would have taken the totality of the story and handed it to a really great editor and said, "Look, I need to put this all together in a logical sequence so each book could stand on its own or be read as a very, engaging through story." And someone else would then go through and sort of break it apart and strip pieces out and place them, like a weird plot board with strings leading over to different potential, plots and stuff. That's what should have happened. Instead, you had someone who had something great and got in his own way.
Question is though, because this was obviously published in 1965, would there have been anybody there able to do this? Because because once again, it's easy to look at this from a 2020s perspective.
Right.
We have seen where writing has went. We have seen an absolute plethora of genres, immersion of genres. And I think it's easier now with the concept of this is an entire universe, get the plot board out. But 1965, you think most things were episodal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Standalone books. The idea of a massive franchise is just anathema, even in books. So
Yeah, it didn't really
was
exist
there?
at the time.
Yeah. So would there have been the capability there to do it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't probably not. And
Because obviously his son Brian Herbert attempts to fill in the gaps and go in places, but doesn't do it well.
oh, really?
Yeah, like there's a whole series of 7 books, and it's talks about the her and jihad and goes into detail about it and that, but it's just they're not good reads.
Oh, that's
So
disappointing.
yeah, so there has been an attempt later on to do this, but I think we'll have to appreciate when this was written, and it was the first of its kind, and it was the first of this idea of a whole expanded universe in the science fiction genre. Fantasy have done it now.
Yeah.
And that's one thing fantasy does really well as a genre, is do these, every time you see fantasy, they're trilogies, they're sets of trilogies and books of, fantasy can do it fantastically. Science fiction has always fallen short, especially science fiction books have never, I can't even think. Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, they're sort of the top tier science fiction sort of books, but those two are storytellers as well.
Yeah.
A problem with science fiction is a lot of it was pulpy. Think of even War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
What was it? It came from outer space. All those. They're all sort of pulpy, flashy, almost comic style. That's been the genre of writing. That's sort of the mind that attracts. Not saying anything wrong, by the way, because I'm a science fiction fan.
Yeah.
Each has their own flavor. Each has their own style, and that's what people gravitate towards.
Yep.
This was the first attempt to almost tell a fantasy story through the sci-fi lens, and you can see the problems because it was never done before. So Frank had if you think about it, he had no template to follow.
Yeah.
The editors would have had no template to follow because they would have got this, man. This is, like even me initially, this is great. What is all this? What? And this, when you have those conflicting emotions, but there's something fantastic there.
Yeah.
But just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and it's so far beyond at this point that there's no way you could even go back and adjust it because you're just going to rile up the fan base again because you're like, you're changing
concrete.
The original.
The concrete's hardened. Yeah.
So let me throw in a comment here from Chris. Frank Herbert's biggest complaint about Lynch's movie was omission to the banquet scene from the book. He forgot, was that in Dune 1 in the recent movie? No, they didn't have the banquet scene in the movie. What that did was ground the Atreides in Arrakis itself and just sort of give a sense of connection and scheming and thinking and stuff, I thought. But it wasn't in the newest movie either. And that's why I didn't fully understand what you were trying to tell me, Colin, when we were doing the movie review. And now I 100% understand it. And there's just no possible way that it's going to make fans of Dune really happy, because it's cutting out half of what Dune is. It'll make people who are not aware of Dune happy, because it'll be a really great, flashy sci-fi film. But it's not really
with the hint of a greater universe.
Yeah, which is awesome. And
then
maybe
they're going to read this, and they're either going to get it or they're not.
Yeah, it's be like,
it is Marmite. Let's be honest. This is a Marmite book. It's either you get it and you get invested, or you're completely turned off.
Yeah,
it's just one of the, it's just one of them things, and I'm happy with that. You don't like it, you don't like it. You enjoy it, you enjoy it. You get invested, you get invested. I don't see the point in this level of conversation we'll have these days. Now, obviously, we don't, because else we wouldn't be talking otherwise. But, oh, you like that? You're a dickhead.
Right.
Oh, you didn't like that? You're a dickhead. I hate you. I don't get that level of conversation today. That's not discourse. It's not. It's like people aren't trying to win each other over. Oh, maybe give us a try. You might like it. No, mate, I didn't. But thanks anyway. Do you remember how we used to talk like that?
Everything's binary now. Everything's 1 or 0, and that's it. And there could be no in between. And I live in a gray world where there is no binary. It's always like, well, I liked aspects of something, and I don't like other aspects of that thing, and that's okay.
Even me, a fan of this series, also understands its problems.
Yeah. But
today you sort of feel obligated. It's weird, and I don't get it, because it's destroyed all forms of conversation. And I hope we can keep it alive. Discourse, because the world sadly lacks it.
Well,
I know there's problems with this book.
Yeah.
I know there's problems with the story overall, and it doesn't mean I still don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
That I don't find myself getting into that universe. That's the thing. When you do go into it, you do step into Dune. You have to. You do become immersed briefly while you're there.
Yeah.
Because it's that whole exploration of the human race. And once again, what I said, there's no aliens in this. This is all humanity.
Yeah. And where humanity can possibly go. It's cool.
And you have to understand that before reading this book, because you'd automatically think like the Thalaxu are aliens, or the Ixen are cyborgs. You'd start thinking, oh, there's aliens now. You wouldn't understand. That's what the first book sets up.
Yeah, they really came out of the war, and they glossed over the war, and so they just appear on the scene. You're just like, whoa, you're having a conversation between the Spacing Guild, the Bene Gesserits, and the Tlaxu? Who the fuck are the Tlaxu? You told me about the other ones already. Who the fuck is this other guy?
Yeah, they just popped up.
Yeah.
That's why I gave you a wee bit of a preface last time. I'm like, get ready for the Tlaxu and the face dancers, because you're going to get slapped around the head with them straight away.
The face dancer was such a disappointment, in my opinion. It could have been so much more interesting, but it really, I think George R.R. Martin stole them for his version of that.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. But I thought he did it better, because at least he dug into what it meant and expanded it up. It's like an aspect of the world that is going to be explored in different ways. Whereas this, they have one, they talk about being others, and it fails at everything it does. So you're just like, what the fuck?
But you had the ones in the sort of dancing troupe as well.
Right, that's true.
Do you remember the dancing? They all come up and they showed off. So
yeah,
it was almost like a performance.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
But once again, this book's too short.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the problem. This should have been the same size as Dune, and I think he should have expanded it out. The same. Going back over the interviews, the mistake he's made is he'd already started in Children of Dune.
Yeah.
And I know that myself. When you start an idea and you're racing on to the next one, all of a sudden you're like, this is the idea I want to do. I just want to get there and then
get past this part and just deal with this.
Yeah.
And then that
one part you see how in my bloody first book, it was horrendous. Yeah. Like I look back at that going, oh right, yeah, I could just see the point where I just wanted to race to the end. Right. So I was guilty of it myself. well, I'm taking my time now. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually
You gotta pace yourself, yeah.
yeah. But that's lessons in life. You
Yeah.
do if you don't try, you don't find out. So I can see exactly what's happened is he's already started in Children of Dune, and he wanted to get that's the story he wants to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if you think of the Alexia are confusing, wait till you get to the fish speakers.
Oh, really? What the fuck?
That's another. What the hell are these?
Great. All
Yeah.
right. I mean, at this point, I understand his pacing and how he operates, and so I feel like I'm sort of primed to continue reading it, the series. But after having read this, I'm like, do I want to continue reading the series? Because it's not what I thought it was going to be at all. I love the universe. I love the world building, and that's what's making me want to read it. But is everything else just going to be like so sporadic and like thrown in there? And I don't know. I just if that's the pacing moving forward, then I'm not sure I want to, because I like a narrative from A to B. I like following a hero's journey. I like this sort of connective tissue from one point to another. This jumps over those points.
Children of Dune's a better story.
Is it?
It is. It does plug a lot of the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna deal with Alia. I'm gonna deal with being preborn and what that entails.
Cool. That's what I want.
Because that's the main, that's the thread that's been absolutely hanging here. It's been, oh, it's an abomination. Why?
Yeah.
So we actually get to deal with that. And to me, that's actually a better story.
Yeah. For that alone, I'll read it for sure, because I wanted that.
We'll see the up. Gemima's a bit of a non-character.
Who?
Leto's sister.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She's a bit of a non-character. It's a bit of a disappointment.
And it's odd because she was the one that was known to happen.
Yeah.
And, like the son, he was just like all of a sudden in his son's head, like looking through his eyes. I was like, oh, wait a second. Is he going to like take over his son's body? Like that would be really interesting. But no, they didn't.
That's good.
Hey, Ian, thanks for tuning in live, by the way.
Yeah, that's now we start to see a bit of this preborn as well. We get a hint of what it's about. Mm-hmm. What I see is that was the story he was focused on, Children of Dune. This was him trying to get there. But because the way this is edited and put together, that's why it's a bit of a confusing mess.
Yeah.
Like, this should have either been part of Dune itself.
Yep.
But I think there should have been 2 trilogies, honestly, because it's so many unfinished ideas here. Like, we need the Beneflexi. We need to understand where they came from, what their schemes and plans are, mm-hmm. how they fitted into the Lanzarad, for example. Because there's no mention of them at all until now, but they've always been there because we know the way he's written them, he'd always intended for them to be there.
Yeah.
So this should have been another trilogy.
Yeah, I think so too. We could have gotten the end of the war, mm-hmm. which would have explained the rise of the Tlaxu. We could have gotten the fallout politically of the war and get the real devastation.
Oh, the Tlaxu didn't come not from Paul's jihad. The Tlaxu have been around since the Butlerian jihad.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
So yes, that's a bit that's been missed over. They have been around almost as long as the Bene Gesserit. In fact, they're a branch off. They're like a separate denomination mm-hmm. from the Bene Gesserit.
Right. Okay.
I don't think they're all male. Like the Bene Gesserit are exclusively female, but I don't think the Tlaxu are exclusively male. I know we deal with male characters in this book.
Yeah,
but I think they're a mixed order.
Yeah, they use they use genetic engineering not to create a profit, though they did try to do that and failed. But theirs is more to progress cloning, right? Like they're trying to...
and artificial insemination. So basically they're the mindset of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. So after the Butlerian jihad, which we don't, there's all part of these philosophies, which is sort of hinted at, and you want to know more. That's why it's engaging, because you want to know more. The Bene Tlaxu said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's aspects of technology that can help humankind, where the Bene Gesserit man, no, complete rejection of technology, pure biology. Mm-hmm. And that's where the two branches are at odds with each other. Both believing that they're for the betterment of the human, like religion, like any religion, everyone thinks they're doing the same thing, and then they do it arts about face, and then when you get down to it, it's people in funny skirts and robes just want the real people,
Yep.
It never changes.
That's
which
religion.
Actually he covers in this, that's once again, there's no hero, everything's grey, everyone's human, everyone's fallible, even gods, which people might have a problem getting their heads around, because when they go into like a fantasy setting, they don't want to see that. They want it all boiled down to binary, black and white, the hero's journey, etc. So,
see, I like that aspect of the story. I think that's a very interesting way to take it, but it wasn't set up that way. It just turned out that way. By focusing the first book solely on Paul's rise and then cutting him off at the knees really quickly, you eliminate what you told everyone it was going to be about, and then you change it to something completely different, thereby sort of sandbagging the audience. You're just like, wait, what? I thought we were going to be doing that, but now we're doing this? Like, this is good, but if that's where you wanted to go the whole time, let's just start there. Like, I don't understand why we start in A and we end up in Z.
Because it's back to this. When you know the history of the book and the series, you know what's happened. He jumped ahead. He started Children of Dune. That's where his mind was, and he just wanted this out of the way. So and it shows. It actually shows when you read it.
Yeah,
that's what he wanted to do. It's so obvious laid out that when you get told it, you're like, that's what happened. But as a reader, it can be really frustrating.
Yeah. There are good parts of this. This is not just a bad book. I mean, again, Frank Herbert's great at seeding a universe and building on that. Sometimes jarringly, but it still makes you want to know more and learn more and sort of uncover and find out why. And
yeah, because if it was completely terrible, you wouldn't care. You'd be like,
yeah.
But he does have it. He has it there that you want to get invested. You want to carry on because you're like, oh, right, he hasn't explained that yet. He's going to later on. Okay, I want to. Well, that's what you're thinking. I'm not saying what he does. I'm just saying that's what you've got in your mind all the time. Oh, right, this is something for later. I think that's his whole series, though. I think that's a good way to describe it. This is something for later.
Yeah.
That's the I think that's what you get from reading his stuff. Right. That he's planting something that's going to come up later on.
Yeah.
But it's continual. So I think what he's bad at are conclusions or ending or closing off story arcs.
Yeah.
That's the disappointing part, because we're not getting okay, I can take it up to here and stop if I want or carry on. That can be frustrating as a reader.
Yeah. So just sort of going back to the review of this particular novel, what was your favorite part of it? I mean, is there like a thing that really you latched onto?
Let's see. The actual plot, when you actually see that how they're using the Space Guildsman, what do you call him? Edric. That he's essentially a shield. Now, we got the idea from the book, and actually from the David Lynch book, that the Space Guild were in control, that they were the ones pulling the strings.
Yeah.
So actually being pulled back when we meet the conspirators, and the fact that these are people that all hate each other. Like, given half a second, they'll draw knives in each other. And the fact that the Space Guildsman was almost being used as he's just a tool and derided.
Yeah.
Which gave me a complete different appreciation, because you get this impression that they were the ones pulling the strings.
Do you think it's because of how it turned out, because Paul took the throne, or because that's always how it's been?
I think what it is, you see them as individuals now. So rather than just being these block units of, okay, here's Space Guild, every space. And once again, it's back to this stupid thinking. Oh, here's a person of this. They all think and look the same.
Yep. It's a monolith.
They're not individual people. Yeah. This collectivism, which is crap. So the collectivism gets broken down, that the Space and Guild are not this one mass unit of, which sci-fi has a real problem with doing with.
Yeah. Well, it's a simplifying
species.
Way of,
like when they say, "Oh, here's a Klingon," every Klingon's the same.
Yeah.
The Klingon, every alien's all the same shade of blue or green, and they all think and talk the same. There's no. At least here, we're now getting the idea. Okay, there's even within the factions, there's individuals who can be swayed and bought, and It's not just these block monoliths that are clunking around the place.
Yeah.
And you get to see a bit more of the intrigue behind. So that whole interaction between the conspirators got me involved, because this is a different, a different tech now. You're seeing it from the other side.
Yeah.
And the same with the Stoneburner.
Mm-hmm. Just came in and went out.
Just
like, is it an atomic weapon? It uses like atomic energy, but it's not a technological weapon. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, once again, but this is Herbert's problem. He doesn't give you enough setup, and I think if this was a traditional sci-fi movie, all this would be explained, because that's the focus of science fiction writing.
Yeah.
But this is a fantasy series at its heart,
mm-hmm.
and it's a political drama.
Yeah.
And it's a religious story.
Yeah.
So he's, one's got to give. So what he's given is the explanations of the setup of the technology and the how things work and what the limitations are.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, that's one by the wayside. But we know that, like the traditional sense, atomic weapons, are outlawed, and it's a great thing amongst the Landsraad. That this is all held together by a set of conventions. The reason that everyone hasn't broken off and just completely warring against each other is because of these conventions, and that's one of them. Using atomic weapons on a planet's surface is a big no-no.
Yeah.
So the fact that they'll go that far, but the fact that Paul gets blinded, and then the whole idea that he's using his prescience that actually see 1 second ahead of himself, he could dial it down that when he's been struggling with it so far until this moment. And then he's able to dial it right down.
Storytelling. It's painful. That part of it, the story, totally lost me from that point on. I think it would be so much more interesting if Paul was not in control anymore, or he couldn't see anymore, because it would have grounded him as a believable character at that point. But it was like the author wanted to show that aspect of him, but he really liked him, and he didn't want to. You didn't want to do him dirty like that. So he's like, well, as long as he stays with this version of the history that he'd already seen, then he'll be able to see. It's like, that belies the fact that there's so many variables and things change. And
that's our issue with this book.
Yeah.
That he doesn't go into that. It's just his style of writing.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a great idea, and of exploring all possibilities, but it just doesn't come across.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, it's my frustration with the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the idea that we're actually getting to see, because it's all been philosophical up to this point.
Yeah.
So at that point, you actually got to see the manifestation of his prescience,
mm-hmm.
which I've been waiting for, because we've been waiting like 2 books now to see it, actually how it operates.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the face dancer. That bit where we meet Duke Leto, or, we'll meet Leto.
Yeah.
And he's pre-born, so the idea that he comes in, we actually see what that looks like.
Yeah.
And using prescience, we actually see it in action. Yeah. Is it done brilliantly? No. But we actually get to see it for once, rather than just being an abstract idea.
Right.
And that was my first shot. Oh, right, here we go. It's actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my favorite part of this was probably it's just the world building aspect of it. I like it when you get to keep telling stories and keep adding more to the story, to the universe. So from that aspect, I liked the Bene Talaxu. I did like the idea of the face dancers. I thought the concept of them was cool. The way that it presented it, the idea of a clone becoming its source material wholly, I think is interesting. And how does that change the way that you define what it means to be a person? This entire universe is set up where there are organizations recreating or changing the way that people are created in order to achieve this one, or a version of this sort of deity, to sort of evolve the species through the species' own machinations. And to see that you can get there, but it's not going to end the way you expect it to end, because we're human. Like, I love that aspect of it. I just think it wasn't told very well. So, that's also sort of my least favorite part about this.
Yeah, this is a contradictory book. The bit you like about it is also going to be the bit you hate about it, because that's just the way it's written. It's a frustrating book.
Yeah.
It'll make more sense in Children of Dune, and you can also go, oh, right, so this is where he was going. As in, this is just a thing it almost feels like a chapter, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
There's another thing, the fact that it was brought up, because it wasn't even mentioned in the movie, why are people running around with swords? And it was because of why are people fighting with swords? And it's the future.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right, and then it gets addressed here, obviously, and it was an Atreides design, the human shield generator, that if a projectile weapon was fired on it would actually take out the entire building with a deflection.
Right.
So that was actually brought in because that changed the whole course. And it was mentioned in Dune as well that the Atreides creation of this human shield, the fact that it was able to be brought, changed warfare. So rifles, plasma guns, projectile weapons basically became obsolete overnight. Because the firing of one of these shields would actually level the entire building around you, apart from the person wearing the shield.
Yeah, but there were guns and stuff.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It was brought in, and then you're like, okay, so there are guns, but the fact of having one, once again, there's another idea seeded.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, where's the payoff?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it's a frustrating read,
interesting.
but it's also fascinating because you're getting a wee bit more into this universe. But the surface level story just doesn't take you there.
Yeah.
How could you fix that? Like I'm saying, it should have been a trilogy. Definitely editing up for this point up the Children of Dune. You should have, definitely edited. What could have fixed it?
Expanding it out, making it more than what it is right now, so that it feels more connected to the previous story, and you could then explain why things are the way they are more, and really spend some time with that universe building to just sink the reader into it, make them feel like they're really, really into it. Because I mean, for the amount of pages he has, I think he does a fairly decent job of seeding a bunch of stuff and really getting you into that mindset.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very, very small. It's 300 some odd pages.
Yeah, it's you flick through it in one go.
Yeah. So anyway,
it's almost like an appendices, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of is. It's like it's an appendices to the first book for sure, to set up for the Children of Dune. It has to be. All right. Well, I mean, we have been talking about our favorite and least favorite, and they're sort of like the same thing ostensibly. So, what would you give a rating for this book?
I think I'll have to change my rating. I know I gave it a 4 initially, but I think I would have to drop it down to a 3 now that I've thought about it.
Yeah.
Just the reason being, it's now that I've sort of thought about it and we've been talking things through. Yeah, I would say it would be a 3, be more accurate, because it's a frustrating book. There's the seeds there of the universe and expanding more into it and getting into the houses that weren't even mentioned. Because the original story of Dune's focused on a small group of people in a huge universe. Now we're starting to see a bit more of that universe, a peek behind the curtain. And that's what I like about it. But the actual story itself doesn't warrant being its own book.
Yeah.
Now to think about it more. So yeah, definitely a 3 would be fair, I think, with us.
Yeah. I had it as a 3, and the more I thought about it, I dropped it down to a 2. Because there's so much lost opportunity that I can't see this as a standalone novel. It makes no sense.
No, absolutely not. If you just pick this off a shelf thinking, I want to get into Dune, you read this, you'd be like, what the hell? And you just throw it away and you wouldn't even bother.
Yeah, so just judging it on its own merits, not the totality of the saga, I have to give it 2. It's just not good enough on its own to warrant a isolated read. And it's not supposed to be. So, I'm judging it on different from what it is actually.
No, but you've got a fair point. When you're talking about serialization, and this is the trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
With storytelling, you're walking that tightrope where, yes, it's part of an overall story, but you have to have each section of the story a contained entity so that people can jump on. Because what puts off a reader more, you want to dive into a series, where do I begin?
Yeah.
Especially if it's not a serialized telling, or you just happen to see it on the bookshelf and you're like, well, I'm not going to pick it up because I can't just read that. I'll have to go back to one, and then you never pick up one because you don't see it again.
Yeah.
That's always the danger. The trick is to have a complete story that you can read it on its own, but then you understand that to get more from it, you go back and read the rest.
Yeah.
This doesn't do it, but then again, I can understand it. It might sound like I'm making excuses, but when this was written and the fact it was the first of its time, this was a new entity people hadn't dealt with. This is a new concept of storytelling people hadn't dealt with before.
Yeah.
Even fantasy, no, nothing had come. Like, really, fantasy didn't until the 80s. No, I mean, it was really the 80s that all this, the idea of serialized stories and trilogies, and that's where it was birthed and really came into its fore in the 90s.
Yeah.
So this wasn't even a concept. But
if
it didn't have
to
this,
think about that, yeah.
Yeah, but if it didn't have this, if it didn't have Lord of the Rings, if it didn't have Dune, literature or storytelling wouldn't be where it is today.
Not at all. They probably would have continued with like short one-off stories, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Little pulp novels, which are fun, but I do like sinking my teeth in something bigger from time to time.
That's it. Once again, one does not preclude the other. This is you can read both. Funny enough.
Yeah.
Like I read some daft cheesy stuff. I watch some daft cheesy stuff, and then on the other hand, I'll go into something really deep and cerebral, and it's about being a balanced person, isn't it? You have different experiences, and this is an experience. That's one thing I'll say about it. It's an experience.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you either get the experience or you don't.
Yeah, it's not wholly bad. It's not wholly good. It just is, and you sort of have to go with it. So
yeah.
In any case, I thought it was fun, and I'm glad that I read it. Now, knowing, I think it's better after talking with you about it, because it makes me want to continue reading. After having finished this, I didn't want to read any more of it, any more of the saga at all. I was just
that's understandable.
All right, I'm done. But now, having the conversations and stuff, I do feel like sort of opens that door for me to continue.
So if you hate Children of Dune, that's it. That's our friendship over.
That not the friendship, but it'll be the end of me reading.
I'm never speaking to you again, you bastard.
I tell you what it does do, though. I think this sets up a beautiful universe for tabletop role playing, like for storytelling.
There is a. You mentioned it, didn't you? There is a Dune.
Yeah. So I picked up the. It's a quick starter guide to it. And it has like pre-established characters and a sort of like an adventure it'll throw you through and stuff. So I'm really into wanting to try that. It's going to have to be like way down the road because I got other stuff on my mind, but I can't wait to dive into that because it's going to like a encyclopedia. It's going to have to explain the whole universe so that you can then role play into it. And that's going to be interesting to me because I've only, gotten a little seeding of the universe so far. So
that's something I'll be talking about in my channel, and let me know if you agree or not. But role playing, I've actually picking up more role playing books now than actual novels because I find the standard of writing is so much better.
Yeah,
there's a desire there to build a universe and to explain things because it's in the mindset of building a game. But one of the after effects of that is you actually get better storytelling.
Yeah. You have to think about every aspect of the whole world. Yeah, I think it's interesting because then you can take a novel from that role-playing system and enjoy it infinitely more because you're already exposed to all of the ideas at once. And so you understand why it's good, and then you can just focus on the story itself in that moment and enjoy it so much more. I don't know. But then again, I don't wholly dislike the idea of just continually seeding new ideas in each future book.
So but you have to tell the story. You have to tell the story. I believe now it's been a few years. Obviously, I'm going to go back to it, but I believe Ali's story gets told better. It's the better story of the whole saga.
Oh, okay.
And her struggle.
Yeah.
Bit of an interesting twist. I don't know if you like the twist on the surface, but we'll see anyway. Yeah. But I think her her story, and then dealing with the idea of being preborn and what that actually looks like, is a better story.
Yeah.
Leto's story gets a bit strange. We'll carry on, but I think Alia's story is the best wasn't told. But that'll be a conversation for another time, I think, and it'll be a good one to have. It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts.
I love these conversations because it does open up so much more than just the text. And I think that's the strength of this whole story itself anyway. So thank you so much for joining me on this review of Messiah, Dune Messiah.
Pleasure to be here, as always.
Where can people find you online?
Oh, yeah, if you want to do that thing. If you like horror, movies, books, games, etc., come on over to the Horrific Podcast. We're starting up the new year and just going to hit it with a bang. Had a wee bit of a break there, and starting from tomorrow, we're back into it again. Awesome. 3 streams in a row.
Yeah, I think the strength of your channel is that it doesn't just do like a story, or it doesn't just do a movie. It's the totality of horror in all of its manifestations. So you do get fantasy and sci-fi involved with that as well. And that's what's so cool about it. So
thanks, man. It's a storytelling mechanism at the end of the day. It's a tool, and it's good to explore that and where it comes from and what the mindset is behind it,
totally
and to challenge some stereotypes.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in live or watching this after the fact. We appreciate your time. If you've read Dune Messiah, what did you think about the novel? Do you think they're going to be able to successfully translate it into a film that feels cohesive? Let us know in the comments. Have a great day. As always, remember, the evil spelled backwards is live, so get out there and be evil. Twirl the mustache.
Evil.
I should just isolate that and add it to the end of all my stuff.